This is an Eyewitness News special presentation. Casey on trial.
Day 16 of Casey Anthony's murder trial, and emotions were running high. Casey cried and even got angry when her mother Cindy took the stand.
I can't look at my granddaughter without getting upset, and I'm trying very hard not to cry.
This was the first time Cindy Anthony has taken the stand since the trial started, and she made some shocking statements during that testimony.
Casey's mother cried when she looked at little Kaylee's picture and even brought Casey to tears. She also told jurors she didn't stop looking for Zanny the nanny until 6 weeks ago. Channel 9's Kathy Bellich was in court all morning for Cindy's testimony. And Kathy, this was a very emotional day.
It was after Casey Anthony's lawyers told the jury Casey's father was sexually abusive and that he bullied her into covering up Kaylee's accidental drowning. Cindy Anthony, who was Casey's strongest supporter, took the stand today for the state. Cindy Anthony testified for the prosecution against her daughter Casey. She never looked at Casey the whole time she was in court, sending a clear message to the jury. Casey appeared downright angry after the first time her mother testified. Cindy broke down after showing the jury Kaylee's crib covered with Winnie the Pooh accessories.
Do you recognize it?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you recognize it to be?
Kaylee's bed.
Cindy's testimony also dealt a big blow to the defense. She testified how she put down the removable ladder to the family's above-ground pool on the ground as usual after they had been swimming the evening before Kaylee disappeared. Our legal analyst Bill Schaefer says Cindy destroyed the defense theory.
That a child of that age and that size could have maneuvered all these, that heavy door, the screen door, got that ladder up, and then climbed up, dropped in the pool, and drowned.
Cindy also testified how Casey lied repeatedly about where she and Kaylee were the first 31 days Kaylee was gone.
Then my mind was just all over the place, and I was just really angry, upset, felt betrayed.
That's the same way Casey's most recent ex-boyfriend told the jury he felt when he found out Kaylee was missing while Casey was living with him but never told him. Casey then told him she showed deputies the apartment where she had last dropped Kaylee off with a nanny, but never told her boyfriend that apartment had been vacant for months. Casey was obviously agitated today after hearing her mother testify for the prosecution. She talked a lot to her attorneys when the jury was in and out of the courtroom. At one point, Cindy asked the prosecutor to remove the last photo Cindy had ever taken of Kaylee from her monitor at the witness stand because it was too upsetting. Schaefer says Cindy's testimony helps bolster George's testimony and his denial that he ever sexually abused Casey, and his testimony that if Kaylee really had drowned, no one would be at Casey's murder trial today. From our studio at the Orange County Courthouse, Kathy Bellich, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Cindy Anthony wasn't the only person to testify on day 16. Coming up, you'll hear more of what Casey's ex-boyfriend Tony Lazaro told jurors about the day he finally found out Kaylee was missing.
This week, we heard the state and the defense lay out their case. On Tuesday, prosecutor Linda Drain-Burdick told a powerful story showing Casey lied for 31 days, partying while no one knew where little Kaylee Anthony was. Prosecutor Linda Drain-Burdick told a simple, powerful story showing Casey lied to avoid getting caught and murdered Kaylee to free herself of the chains of responsibility.
No one else benefited from the death of Kaylee Marie Anthony. Kaylee's death allowed Casey Anthony to live the good life, at least for those 31 days.
For the first 20 minutes of the prosecution's opening, Casey Anthony sat stone-faced, finally reacting when she heard a description of this video, the very last taken of little Kaylee.
Cindy Anthony, unknowingly, of course, at that time, took the last known photograph of her granddaughter.
Drain-Burdick described a month of moves Casey made without Kaylee by her side, all leading up to the point where George Anthony found Casey's car at a tow yard, flanked by a worker at the towing company.
And as they approached the vehicle, an overwhelming smell is emanating from it.
Our legal analyst called the state's opening a masterpiece that detailed nothing but lies, from Casey's fictitious job to an imaginary nanny.
There is no Zanny. Like Casey Anthony's job, Casey Anthony's babysitter was a figment of her imagination.
It all culminated with the state's theory of what actually happened to Kaylee Anthony.
Examination of that scene revealed that the body of Kaylee Marie Anthony had been wrapped in a Winnie the Pooh blanket, stuffed into multiple garbage bags, shoved into a laundry bag, and thrown into a littered swamp like she was just another piece of trash.
While prosecutors told jurors that no one benefited from Kaylee's death except for Casey, who got to live that good life at least for 31 days until she was arrested, the defense painted a much different picture.
Yeah, they called Casey a victim and dropped bombshell after bombshell about what they say really happened to Kaylee.
Kaylee Anthony died on June 16, 2008, when she drowned in her family's swimming pool. As soon as Casey came around this corner and went back, she saw George Anthony holding Kaylee in his arms. She immediately grabbed Kaylee and began to cry and cry and cry. And shortly thereafter, George began to yell at her, "Look what you've done! Your mother will never forgive you, and you will go to jail for child neglect for the rest of your freaking life."
And within minutes, Jose Baez would drop another bombshell. Casey's father, George, was accused of one of the worst things a father could face.
She could be 13 years old, have her father's in her mouth, and then go to school and play with the other kids as if nothing ever happened.
Baez further explained that George and Casey kept Kaylee's death a secret because that long-time sexual abuse led Casey to not only tell lies, but live a lie.
Casey was raised to lie. This child, who at 8 years old, learned to lie immediately.
Our legal analyst Bill Schaefer says the defense's new story is quite compelling but doesn't completely ring true.
You would have to buy that law enforcement, the prosecutors, the Anthony family, in particular George, the FBI, all engaged in a conspiracy.
Schaefer says the story falls apart with claims that meter reader Roy Kronk, who found Kaylee's remains, had staged them there for some unclear reason.
And Roy Kronk's attorney spoke out about how the defense attacked his client, saying he hid Kaylee's body and made money off of finding it. He issued a statement on Wednesday saying, quote, "This defense theory regarding Mr. Kronk is completely false. The suggestion that Mr. Kronk took possession of Kaylee's remains is totally lacking logic or explanation. It did not happen," end quote.
And there may be another major hole in the defense's theory. We found video of Casey mocking the drowning explanation shortly after she was arrested.
Someone just said that Kaylee was dead this morning, that she drowned in the pool. That's the newest story out there. Surprise, surprise.
You can hear Casey Anthony react quickly with a sarcastic tone during this August 14th, 2008 jailhouse visit with her parents. Our legal analyst believes this video will make it into the trial and it will have a big impact on the jury.
Dozens of people lined up to see and hear opening statements on Tuesday, and one woman caused problems for Orange County deputies when she showed up to get a ticket to watch the trial.
I can smell the alcohol in your breath.
Oh, so can you?
I can.
Do you have a degree in alcoholism or something?
Deputies said they suspected Lindsay Scanlon was drunk, so they pulled her out of line before she could get into the courtroom. Spectators can line up each morning for tickets to court. Now, originally only 50 people were allowed in, but on Saturday the court said any empty seats assigned to the media will be opened up to the public.
You saw Casey's defense team's powerful opening statement, but the rest of the week didn't go quite so well.
Do not go there. Next question.
Why the judge had to scold Casey's lead attorney time and time again.
The first week of Casey's murder trial at the Orange County Courthouse was not easy for Casey's lead attorney.
Many say Jose Baez delivered a strong opening statement, but in the following days he had run-ins with the media and was scolded time and time again by the judge.
Come on, guys. What the
Lead attorney Jose Baez shouted out an obscenity and threw down his briefcase after tripping over a photographer from another television station on his way to court on Wednesday. After his powerful opening statement the day before, his week appeared to go downhill quickly. It almost appeared as if Casey's lead defense attorney was either unknowingly or intentionally breaking the rules repeatedly.
Do not go there. Next question.
You were specifically excluded from the rule of sequestration?
Baez approached the sidebar.
Baez went there anyway, and Chief Judge Belvin Perry called him up to the bench and took him to task for it. The judge said Baez was unfairly trying to cast doubt on George Anthony's testimony because George is allowed to listen to everyone else's testimony. The chief judge even sent the jury out of the room to admonish Baez again after Baez repeatedly ignored his instructions not to ask questions about a photo that is not yet in evidence.
I don't know how many times I have to tell, move on to another area. It is not in evidence.
He did it another time when Baez wasn't speaking clearly into the microphone.
The court reporter cannot hear you. So if you're not at the podium, you're not with a microphone on, do not speak.
It wasn't just the judge calling out Baez. At one point, he overruled himself.
Overruled.
Even Casey laughed at that exchange.
Casey's most experienced attorney, Cheney Mason, has stayed back and let Baez handle most of the questioning. It wasn't until Thursday that he finally questioned a witness for the first time.
Did you ever meet the child, Kaylee?
Mason conducted the cross-examination of one of Casey's friends, Matthew Crisp. He asked a few short questions and then dismissed the witness. Next week in court, Kathy Bellich and our legal analyst Bill Schaefer will be covering every minute of this trial. You can watch each witness live from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. every day on Central Florida's TV 27. That's Bright House Channel 10. In HD on Channel 1027. If you have Comcast, it's Channel 20. Then we'll air the trial live on Channel 9 right here from 4 until 5 p.m. We'll also keep streaming proceedings on our website, WFTV.com.
Casey's defense team made serious accusations against her father.
You are badgering me. You're trying to get me upset, sis.
Next, the tension in court between Casey's attorneys and George Anthony after claiming he helped cover up Kaylee's death.
Casey's lead attorney and her father had several tense exchanges this week in court.
Jose Baez slammed George Anthony in his opening statements, making claims that he sexually abused Casey and even helped cover up Kaylee's death. Channel 9's Kathy Bellich is in our courthouse studio now. And Kathy, things were so tense, the judge had to step in.
More than once. Cruel questions, not playing by the rules. That's how Casey's lawyer treated Casey's father, George, on the witness stand this week in his attempt to convince the jury George is abusive and made Casey cover up Kaylee's accidental drowning. Defense attorney Jose Baez sparred with Casey Anthony's father, George, this week, trying to trip him up and ask what our legal analyst calls an unnecessarily cruel question.
And you call the police to report gas cans missing.
Yes.
Not your granddaughter missing.
Correct.
Is that a yes, sir?
My granddaughter was not missing at that time.
One could argue that the move that he pulled on George was, in fact, a sleazy maneuver.
Our legal analyst says Baez is trying to come across as Casey's protector, protecting her from her allegedly abusive father. But Casey's lies, the defense's admission that Casey is a liar, and George's sincere and believable testimony will make for an uphill battle for the defense. The defense claims Kaylee accidentally drowned and George made Casey cover it up to avoid facing a child neglect charge. The defense also tried to accuse George of trying to frame Casey afterward by pointing out how her trunk smelled like a dead body, even though he also had access to that car and trunk.
And didn't call the police and went to work is because you knew Kaylee was dead already. Didn't you, sir?
No, I did not.
But prosecutor Jeff Ashton destroyed that attempt by asking George, would there be any evidence in Casey's trunk if George had, as the defense claims, discovered that Kaylee had drowned and then discarded her body in a swamp? George's answer, of course, was no. From our studio from the Orange County Courthouse, Kathy Bellich, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
One member of Casey's family has not been called to the stand quite yet, her brother Lee Anthony.
Yesterday, Lee was in court for the first time since the trial started, but he was there to support his fiancée, Mallory Parker, who broke down as she described the kind of relationship Casey had with Kaylee.
How would you describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury of the way Kaylee loved her mother?
It was amazing. Casey and Kaylee had a very special bond.
Her testimony even brought Casey to tears.
After that emotional testimony, jurors heard from a tow truck manager about that awful smell in the trunk of Casey's car.
The instant flash in my mind was, whew, I know what that smells like.
Simon Birch manages the company that towed Casey's car. He's had to tow cars related to death cases 6 or 7 times in his career, and he said he knows the smell of death and immediately recognized it when he approached Casey's car.
Jurors also heard from several of Casey's ex-boyfriends this week. Tony Lazaro, Ricardo Morales, and Will Waters all told jurors about their interaction with Casey and her daughter Kaylee.
Much of the first week of testimony focused on the men in Casey's life. First up was Tony Lazaro, who was called back to the stand today to tell jurors about the first time he communicated with Casey about Kaylee being missing. It happened via AOL chat after Casey was being questioned by police.
I'm so sorry for not telling you what happened. We obviously need to talk. I need you, and I love you more than you know.
Lazaro's reply?
Where's Kaylee?
Another former boyfriend offered some telling testimony. Ricardo Morales says he shared this image on the internet. Win her over with chloroform, it says.
Do you know what chloroform is?
I know what it's used for. It's a chemical that I guess puts people to sleep if they inhale it.
Did you ever conduct any searches of chloroform on the defendant's computer?
I did not.
And prosecutors say huge amounts of chloroform were found in Casey's trunk, and the word chloroform was Googled on Casey's computer. Morales also told jurors about sleeping arrangements when Kaylee joined the couple in bed at night.
I slept on one side, Casey in the middle, and Kaylee on the other.
Then there was Will Waters, a man Casey made a date with after Kaylee disappeared. He says she was upset that her boyfriend was moving away, never mentioning Kaylee's presumed death. In Orlando, Steve Barrett, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Before the trial is over, we're also expected to hear from Casey's ex-fiancé, Jesse Grund, and several other men she's dated in the past.
And next, we'll talk to our legal expert, Bill Schaefer, about what we can expect in court next week. And remember, the Eyewitness News team, Kathy Belich and Bill Schaefer, are your best resources for complete coverage of Casey's trial. Starting Tuesday, you can watch proceedings live from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day on Central Florida's TV 27, Bright House Channel 10. In HD, that's Channel 1027. If you watch Comcast, that's Channel 20. Then we'll air the trial live on Channel 9 from 4 until 5 p.m. And you can weigh in on the case in our live blog, WFTV.com.
Casey's murder trial will be back in court Tuesday morning at 8:30.
Channel 9's Kathy Belich and Eyewitness News legal analyst Bill Schaefer explain from our mobile studio outside of the courthouse what we can expect in court this week.
Well, first of all, Cindy's testimony, very compelling, and you say it bolsters George's testimony. Why?
Her testimony was so compelling, she also testifies to facts that George testified to, and her testimony therefore not only dovetails into George, but strengthens George's credibility.
Now, we also haven't heard yet from Cindy about her 911 call to police after she realized Kaylee had been missing for 31 days. We haven't heard about her finding Casey's car, the condition. We haven't heard from Lee. So do you expect that next week at some point we'll hear more from Cindy? She wasn't done on the stand. We haven't seen cross-examination yet.
We'll hear from Cindy first. She'll continue her examination by the state. They're going to get into that 911 phone call. That's going to serve as an entree into law enforcement. But before we hear law enforcement, we'll hear from Lee, Anthony, and then I expect we're going into law enforcement testimony.
Would you expect some tough cross-examination again from Baez? Now, we've said that Baez is acting like her protector because of this claim that George was abusive, but they haven't accused Cindy of abuse at this point. So how would you expect Baez to handle Cindy during cross-examination?
Kathy, I would expect Mr. Baez to cross-examine Cindy completely differently than he did George. He doesn't have to attack her, and as a matter of fact, if he does, he's going to pay a big price for that with this jury, because this jury, she has their sympathy at this point in time.
But there was reaction from Casey today, obviously angry at times. They didn't really look at each other. Casey looked at Cindy. Cindy just did not look at Casey. Baez seemed a little tense as well during Cindy's testimony, so how do you expect him to approach her?
Well, he's going to have to approach her with a scalpel. He's going to have to talk about the fact that perhaps there was something with that ladder. It was up, not down.
Okay, thank you very much for your insight as always.
All right, thank you, Kathy and Bill. And the 17 jurors who are deciding Casey's fate have spent nearly 1 week away from their families in Pinellas County. Yesterday, Chief Judge Belvin Perry granted them a special request to watch a sporting event.
Now, how many of you are hockey fans?
Several jurors wanted to watch Game 7 of the conference finals on TV last night, so Judge Perry set it up for them. But as it turned out, their team, the Tampa Bay Lightning, lost. Kathy Bellich and our legal analyst Bill Schaefer are going to be covering this trial every day.
And you can watch each witness live from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. on Central Florida's TV 27, Bright House Channel 10. In HD, it's on Channel 1027. And on Comcast, it's Channel 20. Then we'll air the trial live on Channel 9 from 4 until 5. And you can weigh in on the case in our live blog, WFTV.com.
Thanks.
It's a story about Kaylee Anthony. Kaylee Anthony was murdered by her mother. Kaylee's death allowed Casey Anthony to live the good life.
Please let the witness finish answering the question.
How would you describe her demeanor?
The way she was every day.
Which was?
Happy to see me, having a grand old time.
I can't look at my granddaughter without getting upset, and I'm trying very hard not to cry.
I would have known something would have happened to Kayla. We wouldn't be here today.